Hey guys, it's Chad from the Teach Better team. I'm here with Bruce Reicher after an amazing Teach Better Mastery chat. Tonight, we are going to talk everything about how great this chat was. I'm really excited to get started, so let's get going. Hello. How are you tonight, Bruce?
I'm doing great. And an hour flies. I looked up and it was 8:44. I'm like, well, 15 minutes left, and typing as quickly as I could.
There you go, man. Stretching those fingers hurting a little bit, right? Nikki Jacoby's just joining us saying the chat was on fire. Thank you for moderating. Already seeing the love come in. I love it, man.
Hey, we were just saying pre-show, shout out to our moms, not only for Mother's Day, but because they made us take typing in school, because I was doing my 30 words a minute, and I actually learned on a typewriter with no letters on the keys. So that's a throwback.
There you go, man. The things we get into in these pre-conversations, I always love it. Absolutely love it. So, Bruce, how are you feeling after the chat? How do you think it went? Are there any moments that really kind of stuck out to you from tonight's chat?
I mean, I'm really feeling after the chat, like once we get off, like start your Wakelet board so you can quickly put everything on there and then to check it out, because there were so many different things flying. And, the cool thing with everything online is there's so many different things that you might not know about. There's no way that you could know them all. And, depending where you are in the country and what people use, there are a bunch of new tools tonight that I'm definitely going to want to, go check out after.
Absolutely. So I absolutely love the topic of media being used by not only teachers, but students in classrooms. One of the reasons I love this topic is, and for those of you watching, whether you know it or not, like mastery is one of the things that I am passionate about. And to me, it's about how students can demonstrate mastery more than them doing it in the prescribed way that we think of, right? And to me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, multimedia, creating outlets for media, creating opportunity for students to use media and experience media in different formats, to me is like differentiation at its finest, right? Like we're truly giving students multiple avenues to show us what they know.
Yeah, no, I mean, not only to differentiate out, but if you look at any hierarchy of learning, whichever one you prescribe to, creating something from scratch is like on top of all of them.
Yeah, and create and design, sure.
The other point that I think of in my head of, I just came off a full year of remote learning and just got my students back 3 weeks ago, and seeing online of educators saying, how can I give the same test to all the students that are doing remote learning at home? And I'm like, give them a media project. Like, they don't have to hand it.
It's real hard to cheat on those too, right?
I mean, just give them a choice board and make an authentic project that they have to do. You'll get 25 different things, not only giving them choice, but there's so much more variety. And if it's an audio podcast, if it's a video, if it's a GIF that they make, whatever they make and create, I find I'm not a language arts teacher, but I'm kind of going through the writing video process with them of, brainstorming, planning it out, writing everything out.
What's your message? Yeah.
Definitely. And, it's in their world. The thing that was cool with the chat tonight was people saying, get TikTok used in the classroom, have them do YouTube video like things in the classroom. I shared out a Matt Miller blog that he had this year that I show the kids, these are the 8 most popular types of YouTube videos. Let's go. Let's make them in the classroom. Do an unboxing video. do a how-to video. They did like recipes this year or makeup or different things, especially being remote learning, to be creative because they have their Chromebook at home and they have their Chromebook at home. So, come up with media creation. Every device, even if it's not a Chromebook, it has a microphone and it has a camera. You're ready to go. You don't need high-end stuff. It's more creativity, what you could think of, and what students are passionate about, to have them create terrific projects for you.
I absolutely love that. A lot of schools do provide that computer, that device that will have that. I think a lot of students also have a really high quality camera and device in their hand most of the time anyway, which they love filming themselves on already, right? And I love that you mentioned that, right? Using TikTok in the classroom, using YouTube in the classroom, because how many kids want to be influencers? So why not use that and go, hey, you really want to learn? Well, you have to have good presentation skills to be an influencer. You have to be able to get your point across, right? Those are all ELA standards, man, all day. You can't. And I think giving students those opportunities and connecting with them, I think makes absolute sense to me. So I love that. The focus tonight on opportunities for students to create, I think, is huge. I also often talk to teachers about students consuming multimedia as opposed to the traditional read chapter 7, right? So like I had a teacher, it was an ELA teacher a couple weeks ago at a workshop, and they were like, when I'm teaching social studies, I can't get over their reading skills. And I asked them, I said, where in the standard does it say you have to measure the student's reading ability? And they're like, well, it doesn't. And I said, okay, so what are you measuring? What are the causes of the Revolutionary War? How many YouTube videos do you think exist about the causes of the Revolutionary War? How many podcasts or audio files do you think exist about this? So if we're measuring one thing, I think it really does go both ways, and we have to be more flexible as educators to be like, listen, media can be text, right? We need to be able to think of text as this broad definition of media in multiple forms, not just like written paper, right? And I love that idea because it expands so many horizons, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Someone said in the chat tonight too, Moat. If you've never heard of Moat or used Moat, like you could go through all the students' work and leave them audio feedback, and it's like you're right with them, in the room, especially for remote learning or if you're doing like hybrid learning. And the other point that you said is, I'm in a school where it's like a middle school. Your phone's not seen, your phone's not heard. Maybe 5 years ago, the vice principal kept a spreadsheet of who was using their phone and had their phone out. Well, now all bets are off in a great way that the phone, same here. I mean, I rather use this any day of the week instead of using a Chromebook camera. And the only thing you talk about TikTok that almost every kid does is they'll film everything this way. It's like, just turn it so you can go full screen. No, we don't have to do that. We'll keep it the way, that we keep it. But no, they have those tools. And even I do a multimedia project. I teach a class on app design. And even at the end of kids creating apps in Google Slides, Google Sites, and then code.org, we put it on their phone. Like, what's the purpose of making the app if you can't
play with it? Yeah.
So, it's interesting, the culture, right? 2 years ago, if all the kids took out the phone in my classroom, I might be like, let me go check with the vice principal before I do this.
Sure. You don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, no way. Now the kids are scanning in the beginning of the day, and that's how they check in to make sure, their COVID check is good and the whole thing. So, the phone, everyone was so scared of it, but it's an amazing device. And, take what the kids know and just go from there. You have a voice recorder, you have a camera, just your creativity, just use it.
I feel like there's this meta side to this conversation of like the progression of technology and going from fear to acceptance, right? I actually remember, and if someone please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I read this article and it was about it was in like Principles magazine from like 1904 or something like that. And these administrators were worried that if students start to use these crazy pencil and paper, that they're not going to know how to properly write on the blackboards or avoid getting chalk dust on their clothes.
Revolution.
Yes, like this was a legitimate concern of like school administrators across the country because of this new technological advance that was the combined pencil with lead inside of it and this paper thing that was like a new idea. And I often think about that, right? If you look at, I just love these conversations because if you look at pictures of subways from like the early 1910s and 20s, everyone has their nose in a paper. It's like you can literally see this. Yet those same people that look at that and go, "Well, that's normal," go, "I can't believe everyone's staring at their phone all the time." It hasn't changed, right? Like the medium in which we're consuming has changed, but the acts of us as humans has stayed the same. So I think this brings up the great point, and I think you made this point really, really well. It's not about being afraid of the technology; it's about implementing it properly, showing students how to use it, but more importantly, meeting them where they are, as opposed to trying to drag them to where we want them or think they should be, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'm also lucky enough I teach a class on digital leadership that we used to even call digital citizenship. And the whole rub of the class is really take a look at the positive side of all the things. There are some negative things, but all the positive things that you could do, to communicate and really looking at the positive, positive side of things. The class actually based off of Jennifer Casa-Todd's book, Social Media, of just go and let kids, almost like service learning projects, let them go and do positive things with it instead of saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. In my humble opinion, like those kids in middle school, they've heard that since first grade. Like there's no sense in telling them, don't give your name and number. They've heard it ad nauseum. Okay, what could you do? And I actually use Common Sense Media, which is free. And all of their videos are from students talking to other students of, how to be safe online, how to leverage things, privacy. And, even that has changed because 5 years ago, all those videos were from adults talking to kids. Now it's all kids talking to kids. And, you hope when the time comes when they go to, send that text or put something out there that's not going to help, their profile and them get into high school, college and above. Hopefully they remember, okay, back in my middle school class, like it was not harped upon us, don't do this, don't do that. But hopefully it triggers something that, use it for good and, make sure your profile is clean, especially if you're applying to colleges, if you're a high school kid. But even middle school kids, they go to private high schools and, someone has a job, go Google them, go on their TikToks, see what they're all about.
You bring up a great point, right? So like, I think it's silly to be afraid of these technological advances, especially in the use of media and social media, because there is a truth to like, this is a part of our world now, right? Like this is part of our actual reality. People are getting jobs via text. People are submitting applications via text. People are literally, I run 80% of my business from this device. Like, and to sit here and go, well, that's different. They shouldn't be doing XYZ. It's so like just weird to me that people are so scared of it, right? Like, so I love the fact that you're just like enhancing that for the students and you're really pushing for that embracement of the technology in the classroom. Because I think it goes back to what you said. Show them positivity with it, right? Show them how to act properly with it. Let them act properly with it. And this goes back to one of my best practices for classroom management, which is assume best intentions until they prove you wrong, right? And it's like you said, every kid in the world, including my kids, right? They've heard don't do that all day. Because if you expect the worst of your students, they'll give it to you. But if you expect the best, they usually show up too, right? Like it's
if you raise that bar, they'll go up to it. We do, luckily enough, 3 weeks ago when I got students back, we just started last week after being remote for a full year. We do a live TV show every single day. I trust them that they go on and what they're going to say and what they're going to do. I mean, they rehearse 3 times, like in 3 classes, before they go on. But, we set the bar high that there's no bloopers on the show. There's no, crazy thing. Like we talk audience all the time, right? Who's your audience in middle school?
Yeah.
The 500 people who are watching every day on the stream in the school, they don't get it where like this is different than you making a YouTube video in your basement. Like, I'm not concerned with the number of hits that we get. I know we have 500 people watching every day in the school.
Every time. Yeah.
Right. It's not to get, the hits or how many people are watching. It's to give you a chance to do it. And luckily I have it set up where you could do it 170 days in a row and come back every day and try to get it, better and better and improve your skills. And I shared one of my favorite parts tonight in the chat is, and this was true, we have the kids just come to school regular time if the doors open 7:30. I had an 8th grade kid a couple of years ago. He comes like lumbering in. He's like half asleep in the morning. I'm like, are you okay and stuff? And I'm not kidding. He was like, this is an 8th grade kid in a 6 or 8 school. This is the earliest that I've woken up in about 3 years. And I'm like, that's it, man. For SEL and motivation, like there's a kid who was late most of the time. He's like, this is the earliest I've ever woken up. And, if you give them the tools and give them the choice, and there definitely is trust involved. I mean, in my school, pre-COVID, when we had kids go videotape things, I'm teaching the class, and then part of it is go out in the school and get stories. There's one of me and 15 of them. I'm certainly not with them, all of the time. And I always think of it, middle school, learn some of those lessons. If you didn't make, good choices when you're out with the camera and whatever you are recording, it's like, obviously you could just turn it off. You don't have to record, what other people are saying. But again, giving them the chance to actually go and do that, and not just be, sitting there learning. I really think, learn by doing. And in my world, I just do mini lessons, give them the skills, and go out and create.
I love it, man. And, we talk a lot about that. One of the big things we talk about on Teach Better team is, self-paced mastery learning. And so it's a lot of that same trust you need to have with your students, right? A lot of teachers, and let's kind of move the conversation here. It sounds like you're really great at kind of fostering that relationship and that trust, even some of that SEL stuff, and sort of expecting the best, but facilitating it to prevent the worst kind of thing, like if that makes sense. And setting them up for success in that way. I feel like mastery learning has a lot of connections with that, right? Teachers need to be able to let go student, and they can't keep control, right? Because here's the truth, Bruce, and we both know this. If you lectured about media for 45 minutes every day in your class, your kids would hate it. Just like they would hate social studies classes that do that, or math classes that do that, right? It's them actively doing and creating and doing stuff with the information that gets them so excited. So if I'm a teacher, let's kind of take it here.
Sure.
I'm not going to keep you here all night. I'm sorry. I get excited when I talk to great people. I'm sorry. But
it's all right. I have all night. We can go as long as you want. you have an hour on me too, or an hour or two, so it's all good.
There you go. So if I'm a teacher and I'm having trouble kind of letting go, right? Like for my classroom, I had kids all over the place. I trusted them. Like I'm right with you. But if I'm a teacher that's used to really buttoned up, I need to have control of my kids, what are some first steps I can take to kind of open up this can of worms or start creaking open this box a little bit to give my students some freedom? What are some tips you would have for an English teacher or a social studies teacher or someone who's watching right now that just wants to start this process?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And if you are more of a traditional teacher and you've taught some way, the type of way, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? It's not easy to make the tradition to kind of be a non-traditional teacher. I mean, the best advice I could give is don't recreate anything. Like take what you're doing and then, create it being media. And I'll give you like a simple example, right? Forget the paper for the exit ticket. Like let them just turn on the camera or put on the microphone with Moat and tell you what they learned in the class. And you're done. Like I would do something small.
That's a baby step you can take, right? Flipgrid.
Baby steps are huge to do. And all the time I have teachers coming to me saying, you know what? I'm going to do this project in French and I'm going to have kids interview each other and then do a menu and then do this. And, I'm going to give them 2 classes. And like, I'm thinking, whoa, do you realize, even for me, if I
couldn't do that, right?
Yeah. And also too, if something's, it's going to take 3 times as long just because It is, with doing the media, if things turn on and charged and, other things that are part of learning and like overcoming when you're using it. So I would start small with, do audio and video exit tickets. Same, any type of reflections that you're going to, have students do. If you're having them do, writing, you still might want to give your traditional assignments that you might give. But I think this is where the choice piece comes in of, you want to write a 10-page report? That's great. You want to do a 5-minute video about the same topic in any curriculum? That's great too. And let them decide and, go to.
And here's the criteria you have to meet, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And the other thing too, I think the tough part, if you're a super, super traditional teacher, you are set in terrific ways and terrific habits of, I'm going to collect the papers, I'm going to grade them, I'm going to put in my grade book, like the whole thing. I think one of the parts just to think through is, if you give a choice board with, 5 different things, well, you better be ready to teach those 5 different things on how to create the podcast, the video, all these different things. So I would start small, and then, expand it out. And the other thing, which I think is the biggest untapped resource that you have, but probably scares that person the most, you have the experts right in front of you. Right? Find like 1 or 2 kids that can, if you don't know how to make a podcast, find a student that has one. You don't know how to do a YouTube channel, find a student that has one. Same with TikTok and all of those. And we get right back into trust and letting go. And the same old, you want to be not the person lecturing in front, but you want to be the non-traditional teacher who's just on the side helping them when they need that. That's not an easy transition to do if you've been up there lecturing for whatever number of years that you want to say. So start small and start with what you have. You don't have to go out and get anything extra than, if they have a phone. I know not every single student has a phone, but if they have Chromebooks, iPads, whatever they might have in your school. And even if they don't have, I actually use these cool little Sony voice recorders. I think PX370 is the name of them. They're voice recorders, and I actually got the idea from someone that I wrote a book with, Randall Tomes and Paula Niedlinger. We wrote a book of doing media in the classroom. He uses this with elementary students. They're not the cheapest, $20, $30 little voice recorders. Go get kids voice recorders so they can record their voice. And that particular Sony one, the novelty is it has a USB built into it. So students could record with it, boom, plug it into the Chromebook. Almost, if you're not old enough, but remember the flip video cameras, it's the same idea.
I had some in my classroom, no joke. Oh my gosh.
It's the same idea with any of these voice recorders. This particular one from Sony just has the USB built in, so you don't have to have any adapter. And we do voice recording even in middle school. I'll have the kids go where it's quiet, because in the classroom, it is going to be hard to record with not getting any other noise. They recorded even today on the little Sony voice recorder, 500 hours it will do for like 2 AA batteries. Boom, plug it into USB, upload it. It's perfect. No noise in the background. Kids can go into a quiet corner, and record, and it comes out perfect.
I love it, man. So many cool things you just said. Like I'm going to kind of like try to rewind it in my head. And like,
I told you we're here all night.
That's okay, man. We could be, apparently. So one of the things I love about what you just said was baby steps. You don't have to change everything overnight, but start. Here's the other cool thing that I got out of that. If there's a teacher right now that says, I'm going to start using Seesaw or Flipgrid or something like that. So instead of that paper exit slip, I'm going to get a student voice, a student video, something like that to record an assessment, right? You are also now collecting evidence of learning that you can show to other people, but also like Seesaw has some features where you can make it send it to their parent. You want to talk about the new letter home? How about the kid sending an exit ticket to their parent about what they learned today? There's nothing better than that, right? Like that's real parent communication, not from the teacher, but from the student in the classroom. So I really love the fact that in the other part about that is once you started using a tool, you have the capacity for that tool. So now that's in your belt, right?
Yep.
So you have that tool, you can use it, you can kind of continue to integrate it. And what I see some teachers do, and you can let me know if you've seen teachers do this in your work and everything else, but they'll focus on the tool instead of like what the tool does. You know what I mean? So I always say pedagogy first, tool second, right? So you have to think like, what do you want this tool to accomplish? And then go find a tool that meets the instructional need. It can't be, I'll talk to a teacher and they'll say, I did a Kahoot yesterday and that was my lesson. I'm like, no, you did a review experience, but you know what I mean? Like you never do a tool. Like it's not a verb. It's a thing that you're using, right?
Yep.
Like,
I say it the same way with you. Like the curriculum should drive the technology, not the other way around.
It's instruction first, man. Always.
Yeah, no, definitely. And giving thought to your other question too, and I'll give you an old school example, which will make sense. I think I'm not a tech trainer in my school. I'm a technology teacher, even though I can help other teachers. I think part of it too is not necessarily like a sell job, but you need to convince or show that traditional teacher, this is not only going to be better, but it's also going to save you time. That now everything is digital, everything's time stamped. And my old school example, I actually did this a long time ago, was I think I used like a freeware program called gradekeeper.com or something. And I took a teacher who used a regular traditional grade book, like writing the grades down and the kids' names in the grid, the whole thing. Yeah, but she had done that for like 20 years. And I'm like, look, I'm telling you, it's going to be hard to learn Gradekeeper, but once you learn it, guess what? The marking period's over and your grades are done. You don't have to spend 3 weekends tallying up everything that you wrote in pencil. And, I think part of that is part of the secret sauce of it, in terms of like, someone has to know what's in it for them in a good way.
100%.
It's going to help their teaching and, keep the traditional things that work, but add in these non-traditional things and just know, they're going to help you. And the other point I wanted to make, and this happened last year, with when the pandemic hit, everything's free. The 10 screencasting things are free. 10 video software things are free. 10 word process. And the thing is, just really pick one or two. Like you give me WeVideo and you give me Google Tools and I am done. End of story.
You're all
There's
set.
nothing that you can name that I can't create with WeVideo and using Google Tools, the Google Suite with it. I don't need... I know Screencastify could maybe do some other things that WeVideo Screen Recorder can't do, but you know what? I'm just using what my students are familiar with, and like what you have, even everybody getting into video conferencing, just hit record and you made a screencast. Like, don't make it more complicated than it has to be. And I think from companies giving everything free for COVID, which is terrific, but also school districts in the whole country saying, well, let's train you on these 30 pieces of software, when you're already freaking out. Like our school went from a Friday to a Monday, from being in school to full remote. You don't need to learn 30 tools. Use the tools that you have and just dig deeper. If you're a Microsoft or Google school, it doesn't matter, with the normal tools that you can use and just create with those. And I think that's kind of like a mistake that people make. And if you're the traditional teacher and you're saying to them, hey, here's 30 tools that you could use, they're like, okay, thanks so much. My door is closed and I'm just teaching the same way I always taught, because they're blown away.
Yeah. And they're burnt out at the same time, right? I'm 100% with you, man. I love it. Taking baby steps, focusing on instruction first, and the idea that like choose a couple tools that work for you, or like, I think that goes back to like, don't replace the instruction that works. Enhance it. Make it easier for yourself. So find those things that make your job easier. Same thing if you look at like, this isn't necessarily a multimedia idea, but like Google Forms instead of a traditional exit slip. You know what I mean? Like it's like the same, like that's going to save a teacher time once they have it in place, right? So I absolutely love that discussion.
Right. Timestamp is a beautiful thing. And once you show a teacher that's never used it, Google Docs and all the Google tools, and you could go back in history and see exactly what they were doing, especially if your kids were on remote or hybrid learning, right? You could go into history and see exactly what they did, what day they
and
did
when.
it,
Yeah.
what second they did it.
I
So
love it, man.
think about that for group projects, which we always know some kids are pulling a little more weight than others. You see exactly who logs
Who
in
did what?
and they logged in, and you'll never get that with pencil and paper. It's just
Right.
impossible to do.
Absolutely. So let's start closing this out a little bit. It was a fantastic chat. I absolutely love this discussion. So I want to thank you for that. So any final thoughts as we kind of close out this discussion and tonight's chat topic? Anything you want to kind of leave our audience with?
Right. I mean, the thing that I keep thinking in my mind as like education is changing is we're talking about the traditional to non-traditional teacher, right? Things that you would keep in your toolkit that don't get rid of all those great things that work. Well, everybody's been on remote learning, hybrid learning. I don't know how it is in your part of your country, but here in northern New Jersey, we have a month left of school, maybe 6 weeks, because we go to the end of June. Everybody's coming back. So once this, and I'm talking about this year, like in May 15th, May 17th,
Wow.
before end of the year activities, like lunch, recess, everybody's coming back. Even the stadiums, Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, they're 100% next week. Like starting May 17th, they could fill them up 100%. So parents are saying, well, why can't I have recess and lunch in school if Citi Field and Yankee Stadium,
Yankee Stadium's open? Yeah.
right, are 100%. And, my point just is we've all flourished. I think a lot of educators I have with social media, meeting people, learning StreamYard, learning how to use whatever tools, you're learning, take them back into the classroom with you.
Yeah.
The simplest thing to do is, get an expert, and this is perfect for a curriculum. It doesn't matter what you teach. You teach physics and you're a high school teacher. Well, get a physicist, get a professional on to talk to your student. And at one point, right, everybody was home. So it was super simple to get people to come on. But most people, I don't want to say all, but most people in different fields, they're not saying no to educators of, I love what you're doing. You're physics person,
work at NASA or whatever,
professional world. Would you mind popping into my Zoom and use it, talk to my students about, possibly like going into that as a field. I find it hard to believe anyone who's going to say no if you approach it that way, to have them come in as an expert. And I just think certain things, even like a simple thing like sharing your screen in a Zoom or Google Meet, it might be better than teaching from the board. Because everybody could see it right in front of them. And I'm not suggesting, to do Zoom the whole time, but take pieces of it, like sharing the screen, which, people have right in front of them, instead of, if you have a lot of students in your classroom, it might be tough, to see the whatever type of digital board people might use. So, the thing I keep thinking about is leverage the things that have worked well with remote learning, bring them in. And even like I do a lot of ed camps, when we had ed camps in person before the pandemic, why wouldn't you have a monitor behind you with a Zoom room every single time you do a session at an ed camp? You could have people from around the country over your shoulder, and then the people in front of you, it becomes such a richer conversation than the people that might be in the room with you.
Absolutely. I love it, man. I appreciate your knowledge. So I'm sure other people have appreciated your knowledge too. So if they want to kind of either further connect with you, find out more about your work, or purchase your books, how can people connect with you? Do you have any projects that are going on that people should know about? I'll give you a couple minutes, or a minute or two, to kind of let people know where to find you.
All right, cool. Well, for the book is called Scripted, An Educator's Guide to Media in the Classroom. It's written by Randall Tomes, Paula Needlinger, and myself. And I'm proud to say we did no research for the book. It's all our personal experiences.
Love it.
We've all taught over 20 years in different media classrooms. And the biggest, fattest chapter is on curriculum and projects and how to get started, projects with directions, rubrics, everything, right in the book. ScriptedEducators.com is the website, and it's on Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all of that. It came out last August 11th, this past summer. And the easiest way to get a hold of me is just at @Reicher on Twitter. Is the easiest and the simplest way to get a hold of me. And I'm happy to talk and, share with anybody. And same, like I said, of people in industry. I think the same with us, with educators. 99.999% of people, I've done it in this past year. You talk to them online and you meet them through Twitter. There's not one person that I've DM'd that hasn't sent me a direct message back.
There you go, man.
You know, educators are awesome, helping each other online. So at B. Reicher on Twitter, and the book Scripted, An Educator's Guide to Media in the Classroom, everything from A to Z, community, curriculum, planning, you know, out of vision. There are chapters on hardware and software of all the different tools, like that Sony PX370 little voice recorder that I was talking about. And the last thing I'll say is we wrote this book because honestly, like, we couldn't find one, and we found like the book you were talking about, the broadcasting book from 15 years ago. So that's not going to help us too much with, you know, a camera and a VHS tape in it, you know, like,
there you go.
That's not going to work. But thank you so much though for having me on. It was a blast doing the chat and hitting up StreamYard afterwards too, and talking a little bit more.
Absolutely, man. Bruce, I appreciate you. Have a fantastic night. Thank you, everybody. I'd love if you would fill the comment stream with some green hearts for Bruce and the amazing job he did tonight. We will catch everyone later. Bruce, thanks a lot. Have a fantastic night. Stay awesome, everyone.
Thanks, you too.